Welcome back to Foiling Week 2021 and the Gurit Forum. I am your host, Chris Museler, and my co-host today back is Laura Marimon, live from Lago de Garda, and Andrew Pindar. So we've been plugging along day 2 of Foiling Week, and this second half of the day, we're going to be talking about one of the 3 pillars that I'm always mentioning for Foiling Week, safety, sustainability, and accessibility. Today, we're talking about safety, and after this session, we're gonna have an awesome conversation between 2 of the pioneers in hydrofoil training, in boats, in board sports, and just how to introduce people to foiling and do it safely, because it's, the technology is actually developing faster than, training facilities and sailing organizations are able to keep up with administering the sports. So our guests are Jordi Adanega from SailGP. He's here for a couple different reasons, but one of them is because he analyzes any safety issues with SailGP and particularly accidents. And that's really important. There's a kind of a big list globally of hydrofoil accidents, and we like to learn from those things. And the rubber meets the road with products. So with Edouard Dudor from Decathlon, the reason why we have Edouard is when I say rubber meets the road, everything we know about hydrofoil safety comes down to the products that we use, the hydrofoils and the boats and the equipment that we wear. And Edouard has come up with some really innovative solutions with Decathlon, his company, and all of his team there to help make foiling safer. So without further ado, I'm just going to start by mentioning that we'll bring in Jordi first. In Bermuda a couple weeks ago, SailGP, or maybe a month ago, however long ago it was, SailGP, the hydrofoiling F50 catamarans, there was an accident that seemed between Japan and Team USA where it seemed not too crazy, right? One boat lifts a little higher off the foils and runs into the leeward side of the other boat. But what happened in that whole process is the boats are going pretty fast, and we don't realize when boats are going really fast, any angle change puts a lot more pressure against things than a normal boat going 8 or 9 knots running into each other. And then the hull goes into the leeward shroud, a carbon shroud, and literally saws halfway through the bow of the boat. And then afterwards, the USA team winds up capsizing as a complication of that accident. So it's not just hydrofoils running over people falling overboard, hitting hydrofoils. We're running into all different sorts of challenges with these boats going so fast, and we don't expect what's going to happen. So Jordi, tell me, on the SailGP side of things, you have some of the fastest boats in the world, sailed by the best sailors in the world at SailGP, and but accidents still happen. So before we analyze that accident, what's the overall discussion at SailGP about safety? I mean, I'm assuming it's right up front in the discussion every day, but these are hydrofoil boats. So what's the big discussion at SailGP?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to the sailing week, the foiling week. It's a shame that I cannot join you in Lake Garda.
Yeah,
absolutely shame. Of course, I would like to be there. As an ingenuity company, we start working with SailGP because we thought could be a good opportunity for us to bring all our experience we have in the past with working with Formula One and super.
What's your company? I'm sorry, I missed the
Ingenuity.
Ingenuity. Okay.
Yeah, we are located. We are a part of a big group called HRC, but we are located in UK. Mm-hmm. Now I'm based in Barcelona, but the company is located in UK. Yeah. And we have plenty of experience in Formula One and super sports cars. So and also we have our own simulator, crash simulator. So we thought, at the beginning we started working with SailGP for the design as also for the material characterization is a tricky point. We need to understand deeply the material in terms of seeing what's going on with and what is the reaction of those materials, more than getting the information from our suppliers. I think that this is quite a tricky thing, getting the information of the material. But then suddenly, those crashes happens, and those boats are crazy, extremely speedy, So We didn't expect that things, and I think it's something new for us. But I can tell you that SailGP is very concerned about safety. They are also introduced many things of the crew that they're wearing in terms of the safety. But now we are taking into consideration the potential crashes, no? And I think this is one of the hot topics we are working on it. Not what happens, also we are considering future problems or crises that they can have in the future. No?
Great. And one thing that we talk about in the sport is that, and I talked to Edward about this a little bit, is that it's hard for the sport to become popular, at least in a user, interaction, if it's perceived as unsafe. As you know, with Formula One and with SailGP and the America's Cup, part of the attraction is the potential for an accident. You don't want one in Formula One or SailGP, but it's almost like competing interests. And I wanted to throw this to Andrew. We have this bittersweet relationship with foiling, don't we? It's on the edge, but like what Edward has with hydrofoil products, we want people to be able to use it safely. Do you find that a problematic in terms of sponsorship and promotion of the sport? That kind of risk and reward. We're in a different area with foiling versus regular sailing.
Well, for me, I think it's a sport that has risk attendant with it, isn't it? We just have to look at foiling. For those of us who saw the images of the two J boats colliding last year or the year before, I mean, that was as worrying, if not more so, than seeing two foiling 50s kissing with each other. So I think it needs to be a view that's taken across the whole of the sport. And which you say, though, if somebody's going to sail single-handedly around the world in the Bondi Globe, that again is something that has high risk attendant with it. So I guess it's about managing risk. And from a sponsoring point of view, my perception is that the companies that will wish to associate their name and their brands with a sport of this sort of nature will just need to be reassured that the sort of process that SailGP is undertaking is professionally done. And so it's great for me to hear Geordie's input on this, because I think that is part of the way that the sponsoring companies will want to make sure that they're not exposing themselves to look as though they're participating.
Awesome. And Geordie, let's before we go over to Edward on the product side of things, in terms of what are the analysis of accidents, and then, like you said, trying to predict what might happen. I mean, I never saw it coming, an accident where a bow gets sawed through, right? So maybe give me some of the takeaways, from your analysis of that accident, what might come of it, as an example of figuring out how to create procedures and protocols going forward.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the first step is analyzing the materials, and we predict the potential crashes, and therefore, as we made in Formula One, of the cone of the car and so on, it is about absorbing energy and try to avoid potential damages for the crew. The crew is the most important,
Right.
The secondly is the boat, So the most important is the safety of the crew. So now what we are analyzing is potential crashes between two boats, or the two catamarans. Poorly in the worst scenario is 50 knots. Imagine the two boats crashing at that situation. Of course, normally it's not going to happen, because the crew has the reaction, and they can just. It is not going to be a 90 degrees crash.
They see it coming.
Yeah, at least they have, well, I don't know how it's going to be the reaction with a 50 knots. I think I cannot imagine how can be this sailing in 50 knots, even if you wear those kind of glasses. I think that's I think everybody will be very interesting in get that feeling, or at the end get that feeling of sailing in that conditions. But we extremely are considering the worst scenario and try to save of course, the cabin crew in terms of be very, very safe, right? In terms of not having any kind of damage.
And I'm guessing that it's up to the managers of the event. I mean, you can tell them what safety procedures you can do in terms of even just structure and.
We suggest to make some changes in the bow and in the cabin, some reinforcement parts and so on. So I can show you something that is very unique. It's no one's so.
Yeah, please share.
And I think it's let me just show something that you can realize what we are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Please share your screen. And while you're sharing your screen, Laura, I have a question for you on the engineering side of things. I don't think that the F-50 was necessarily designed with reducing impact on crew for crashes. It was designed as a solution to a design rule. What challenges do engineers have in terms of considering the safety of the crew versus designing to a rule?
I think there are, for sure, the F-50, they trickle directly from the Old America's Cup in Bermuda. Mm-hmm. So there was a clear rule for how the boat looked like, and now they've been adjusted to order the specifications that they don't need the cyclist on board.
Right.
But it's not only the rules of the boats themselves and their kind of structural integrity for the crew. Is also kind of sailing rules of sailing, sailing rules that need to change slightly for these fast boats. We've seen it in the Nacras, for example, or in boats that use a Gennaker. It's quite difficult to see going downwind if you're on port a boat that goes still upwind on starboard. So how do you adjust those split-second decision in the sailing from a design point of view? How can you make boats and crew safe, more or less?
Gotcha. Yeah, and I didn't consider the actual racing rules as a safety mechanism, but it is. Jordi, do you what's your thought on presentation there?
Try.
There we go.
Yes, did you see it?
Yep. Yeah, no problem. We got the forever view of ourselves.
Did you see something or not?
Yeah, we see your screen.
No. Okay.
But we don't. We just see the StreamYard's side of things. And while we're waiting for you to go through that, Laura, you mentioned the Nacra 17s, and we know that some of the kind of toughest accidents that we've seen in hydrofoiling have come on the legs of Nacra sailors falling off and getting hit by the rudder, probably.
Yes, I think this directly links to the Decathlon new foil, but also, in Olympic classes, they're looking at kind of making the leading edges a bit blunter, so they're not cutting knives, basically.
Yeah.
If you fall on the water, your rudder and the next boat coming behind you, that will be the most dangerous two things that can happen to you, more or less.
Gotcha. And just awareness of these possibilities, just like Jordi was saying, we have to be able to predict, but just the awareness of the possibility is something that is important for everyone to understand. Jordi, so what do we got?
So you can see right now.
Yep. Ouch.
Okay, do you see it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a 90 degrees impact. Okay, if you can see the problem is one of the bows going to the cabin crew.
Yes.
That is what we need to avoid.
That's the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, it's the worst case scenario. So that is what we need to avoid.
Right. And what your simulator, this is coming from the automobile industry too?
Yeah, it's what we are working. We work with this with Formula One in the past. So it's our own simulator. So we're using this simulator in order to see how we can manage the material from, in that case, we manage the material of the bow, and also what we can reinforce the part of the cabin in terms of the not having that kind of penetration from one boat to the other.
So it's very much, I mean, we talk about highway speeds with foiling, but it is very much the exact same thing as car crashes, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're using the. So let me. No, I'm just lost about sharing the no,
That's
yeah,
okay.
no, yeah, I'm not familiar with this program. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what we're using is trying to migrate that knowledge from the F1 and what we are doing with the simulator and put it in the crash of those SailGP boats F50.
Right.
Because at the end, what we are considering is the material. We need to understand what is the reaction of the material and what can be the material and the layup of that material in order for one side is because we need to absorb energy, but also absorbing energy, but not losing the stiffness, and also to save the security of the crew. So this is the most important, no? Of course, we are simulating potential crashes, but at the end, when some things happening in the following events, we can predict and we can analyze specifically other potential things that maybe we cannot imagine.
Great. And it's fascinating to see that you are trying to, like you just said, predict things that you can't even imagine. And that's the kind of the world we're in with hydrofoiling, because every time we get into a new space where hydrofoils are being used, we have to be able to imagine how it's all going to work.
Yeah, I think we are living in a new marine era. No, I think that foiling things it's completely different. I used to say, well, we are not sailing, we are flying. No, even the crew has to be prepared for physically, if in other matters, because with those speeds and so on. I mean, with the fish bowling and those things, potential things, it's quite important. No, also we have experience as well in kinds of safety of airbags and also the neck brace and those hands that they are using in F1. So maybe it's some equipment needs to be implemented in order for the safety. So I think we are learning a lot, learning by doing. That's the main problem. But I think we have enough technology and know-how to bring it for the marine sector, and that I mean it's very nice. It's challenging, and I think it's very interesting to living that situation, that new era that is coming from the marine sector.
Awesome. And it is really exciting. And I think that we're going to shift the conversation now to the products. And it's one thing to talk about SailGP and the America's Cup, where it's a very closed system with a lot of money and effort being put into it. There are racing rules that are modified for that event. There are protocols for crash boats. We had back in 2017, we saw simulators to train motorboat drivers, support teams, to show what it looks like from the vantage point of a chase boat when an F50 goes around a weather mark and then accelerates and comes right at you. So there's safety all the way around for that support network. Where Edouard from Decathlon comes in is he's designing hydrofoils for the recreational space. Outside where there are no rules, off a beach with only surfers around or other small recreational boats. And so it's a little bit of a different environment. And the driver is not attached to the board in any way. So there are a bunch of different parameters. So I want to talk to Edouard about, the concepts at Decathlon, what your kind of why you came up with this product, what problem you saw, and why you came up with hydrofoils that are basically softer and a little less dangerous than the current hydrofoils.
Yeah, it all began with the observation of first people like competing with foiling that made other people want to do the same.
Right.
And what I observed in the early steps of surf foiling, for instance, which was before wing foiling that boomed afterwards, is that it was a revolution at that time, and
only like 2 years ago.
yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy what happened since then. But what I observe is first the mainly good surfers went to foiling, and many others wanted to go, but many of those were afraid of what could be done when doing the first steps. Right. And so the fear was about the balance you need to have when foiling, and because this balance is unstable, it can make you fall. And when you fall, you may crash with your equipment mainly, and so this is for the rider himself. And also for the people around. Like the first impression of people looking at it was, first, it's kind of magical, and second is, what if you fall on this, or what if I swim around, and what can happen to me? Right. So it was a matter of safety, both for the riders and also for any people being around. So this was the first point to solve when considering how we can make foiling sports more accessible to anybody. Safety. And beside that was also how to make it easier than it was. And it's all about what you mentioned earlier about performance and how you balance performance with safety.
Right.
So in Decathlon, I chose to focus on safety because so many products in the market are already good. It's impressive how the performance has grown the recent months, years, days. It's going so fast. So I wanted to focus on safety because I was surprised nobody did, actually. Right. So this is what I wanted to do with the team here, and what also people around me, like surfing, foiling, wanted to have for themselves or for friends or relatives that also want to begin foiling sports.
Cool. And we're looking at your product right now, and it's a bold move, when everyone is doing super high performance, pointy, higher and higher aspect. I mean, we talked with Eric Antonsen from the Progression Project podcast, and they talk a lot about hydrofoils with little wingtips and how they say, these are amazing. They won't, I can bring my tip out of the water and come back in and not ventilate. But man, they keep sawing off the tips because it's just getting even near them, you get cut.
Yeah.
So it's hard it's a bold move on your part to go away from what the market is telling you is the best product ever. Go ahead.
I believe that, and I understand that, that many foil makers focus on what could be the next step for performance, and and that's the way it does, and that's the way the sport is getting better and better, and inspiring for many people that do not even know the sport, and then realize, wow, it's just crazy. And so most of the time you design your products for yourself or for athletes around, and in this case, indeed, we focused on the ones who didn't experience this feeling before, and indeed it makes something different from the market, but I'm sure that it will bring more people to it, and then more people to the performance hydrofoils as well.
Right. You bring up an awesome point, and I'm going to bring this back to Andrew and Laura. which is that we are in Foiling Week. We're in a real bubble, right? I mean, we're talking to Jordi about like the absolute peak of hydrofoil racing, right? And when we're talking to people about kite foils and surf foils and other kinds of racing foils, it's the tip of the spear we're talking about. Faster, just make it just usable enough, but the fastest possible thing. But your point about popularity that you mentioned before we got started, there's performance, but then there's safety. And what safety is going to do is what I'm hearing from you is help out with this whole other population of people that would never have come into it at all in the current product range. You know, even the easiest Nash foil, the easiest lift foil from Nick Leeson still is, you know, has those dangers. They're still in the same family of safety, you know. And so what you're looking at is something beyond what we're used to in the wind sports universe. And there's a barrier that they just won't cross. And people in wind sports, like Andrew said, are willing to take a certain level of risk. Even just sailing an Optimist has more risk than your hydrofoil. So Andrew and Laura, what do you think about that kind of viewpoint where Eduard's looking beyond the normal market that we're looking at Foiling Week and in the sailing world?
Well, I wonder whether in fact, Jordi's got the opportunity because of a one design class with sales, isn't it? Because you're not having to compete boat to boat. Whether it's about the team on the boat. It's not the boats are identical. So when you've got an identical situation, making a change that affects all the boats is not. It might have an effect on the overall speed or something, but it's not going to have an impact on the competitiveness of the boats because they're all going to be affected the same way. So is that some consolation, Jordi, to be able to know that you can apply some safety features because you're not getting it. It's not. I know that of course Russell's wanted to get the boats to be as quick as they possibly can. He also has to have a series which is safe. That's why he's engaged with you guys. So do you feel that gives you some comfort? Because I think that you are different in that sense to the widest market where everybody's trying to outdo each other.
I also have a link, I guess, between the two, because what Eduard is saying is coming in from the trying the foils for the first time and learning the technique and growing your confidence on the foil. That's also going in general a lower speed. And so the accidents that do happen in that case, maybe they're more because people are just learning how to foil, but they're probably less severe. Whereas we go to the other end of the spectrum where we have the top athletes, top speeds, the number of accidents might be less, but that's where the fatal things happen. And the link between from Eduard to Jordi, I think, is very interesting here because we see how you can learn your foiling technique in a safer way, but still be safe when you're in the top of your game sailing the safety around.
Right. And we're just talking about two different ranges, right, in terms of these solutions. So the speed delta for Eduard's product is, they want to do 12 knots instead of 25 knots. And for Jordi's case, the limit is, maybe Andrew's solution is to take Jordi's recommendations in terms of material and structure and body armor and helmets and stuff like that. And that might reduce performance from 50 knots and everyone's just only peaking out at 43 knots, or something like that, or 38 knots. But it's just a different delta.
Well, I think, you are completely right. No, I think there's a very fine line between a spectacular and dangerous situation. So of course I think what we are doing in the, let's say, in the top in the top sports, in the most top situation, I think it's important because I think what we are analyzing and what we're doing in the CellGP, that at the end, that knowledge can be bring to the mass production, somehow.
Yeah.
So I think, well, that happened in the automotive sector, that happened as well with Formula Ones or Le Mans, all the innovations and preventing things at the end go to the market, to the mass market. So somehow we can give that knowledge to at the end to Edward, or to the others that can create these own products. And yeah, for sure, we are going to have limitations. I think for sure, CellGP is a very spectacular race, but I can tell you that the managing race, and of course in particular Russell Cooks, is very concerned about safety. So this is the priority. So of course, maybe, yeah, I mean, maybe the races has to be canceled more than 25 knots wind, situations, because we are suffering that something that we cannot even with all the safe support we can give, it's also impossible to to manage by a crew. No, it's impossible to manage in a normal situation. So I think that's but yeah, we're considering all the things, not only the materials, but also we're considering that we're giving all the information to the race management in order to consider in the correct way.
It's so funny because in a lot of ways, CellGP is kind of the pinnacle of racing, but Edward's in a more competitive environment for his product in terms of selling it and getting it out to market. Edward, what's can you on the design side of things, is the goal to, we talked about performance, is the goal to create, you've already created an amazingly safe product that works great, right? And it's just to get it in front of the people that can really get inspired by it and use it. Design wise, a smaller company like yours has limited resources in terms of increasing the design potential, increasing the range, like lower stall speed but higher top end speed, that kind of range for a product. Can you use, can you work with other people like CellGP to get that information to move the product into performance while still maintaining the safety?
Well, I'd be really interested to work with you guys for that. First, I'm impressed about how the level of performance you managed to reach. For the product that is already on the market for the safety point, this one, it's just a first step. It's a first step with one size. This is a medium size, and this medium size has been designed for surf foiling, SUP foiling, and tow foiling. Okay. So the next steps, which a market larger than the first one, is wing foiling. Yeah, that many people ask for that. And so this is just a first step that works for surf foiling, SUP foiling, tow foiling. This was designed for that, and it's working well for that. The next steps will be for wing foiling, and with longer mast as well, and bigger size of foil, and the wing of the foil. And so if we can manage in the coming future to mix performance and safety, would be a dream, and I'm sure we'll go to it, and if we go together, we'll go faster, because when you realize everything which has been done in the recent years about foiling, just pumping on flat water, just taking several waves, it's just crazy, and I'm sure in the coming weeks, months, years, we'll discover new ways of using foils, and I'm sure also performance will be safe in the coming future. So yeah, of course, I'm if we join our forces, different ones, and experience, will be great.
Cool. Well, I have this dream right now that, so again, our pillars are safety, sustainability, and accessibility. And one thing we talked about in the Sumoth Challenge, which we're going to be talking more about specific in the Sustainable Moth Project in the next sessions today, is that, some of us feel guilty about putting, super high-end carbon stuff on our feet, And I'm sure 11th Hour Racing has worked on abilities to analyze the life cycle of the materials and trying to upcycle things, and so the products that we use aren't as environmentally toxic. My dream is to have a sustainably built like flax board and a safe hydrofoil like yours, and then that's inexpensive, which makes it more accessible, as well. And so the ultimate little product, and if we move into small boats like the UFO and the Wasp and stuff like that, to me, that's my dream that comes out of Foiling Week, where we hit all of these things, where we have that compromise of performance and safety, performance and sustainability, performance and accessibility, and it all still works and feels good. Along those lines, we haven't talked about gear too much, but Laura is a NACRA 17 sailor and has been foiling, and you're an engineer. On the gears, we'll just talk about this briefly. I think it's really kind of hard to hurt yourself on one of Edward's boards, but in NACRA sailing in the Olympics now, it's pretty easy to hurt yourself. And obviously in Sail GP, it is too. Laura, just briefly tell us what your opinion is and what your experience is with the gear that we're wearing right now, whether it be for surf foiling, whether it be for catamaran sailing. Do you have an opinion on what's best right now?
So depending on the class and which country you're sailing on, you have different regulations.
Right.
The first of all would be sailing with a helmet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some head injuries we saw were actually concussion, which to my knowledge, we don't have a specific helmet for concussion for water sports yet. So that's something that can be improved, and impact protection for sure. But in the Sail GP and the America's Cup, for example, they have another level of kind of safety features on board, the spare air to breathe underwater, knives to cut ropes out and if you get trapped.
Right.
So all that is ramping up for sure since the 2013 Cup or just before that. But I think there's still development to be done, and seeing a company like Decathlon, which for sure gives access to everyone for their products, is having gear introduced in their brands as well could be a good option for the future. If I may, I have a question for Jordi, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go right ahead.
Do you ever see in the future some sort of control system where, like they're developing now in the automotive and they've developed in the aeronautic industry, where at one point the helm doesn't see what's going on and the control system takes over to avoid the crash? Or is that something not going to happen in Sail GP or?
Well, I think this is a so far point. No? I think we are just begin and we just start, and I think it's a lot of room, a lot of space to improve. No, you can imagine that happens in automotive after so many years of improving safety and so on. We just start, and this is a starting point. Of course, there is a lot of room and a lot of space to improve. But yeah, for sure, I think we can bring our experience that we have in automotive, in aerospace, and bring it to the marine. No, this is challenging, and I think that we are very excited for trying to migrate all this information, all that knowledge for those sectors to the marine. And yeah, who knows, no? But of course, that this is going to be, it happens, it's going to be by sensoring, but adding some sensors in the boats. And yeah, of course, we have the technology. The thing is, we have to make that thing happen. I don't know. So maybe SailGP is a good platform to improve all those things more than American SCAP. That in American SCAP, of their regulations and so on are more tough, and seems that it's going to be difficult. Also, for me, Bende Glove, in terms of seeing what happens in the last time of the problems with the carbon fiber parts and so on. I think there's a lot of room to improve. Cannot happen. That those races, and after all the work done before the race, that at the end someone can have a problem with carbon fiber parts. For us and for our experience that we have been done working for F1 cannot happen. This is something that we can save, and of course we are going to help the sector to improve in that direction.
Right, and that brings up an awesome point that I'm always thinking about in our industry, which is that in F1 and in the aeronautical and aerospace industry, a plane the wing can't break off. It's like not allowed to happen. But for some reason in racing, occasionally a mast will break or a foil will break in the Vendée Globe, and it's I don't, I guess you all know the difference, as engineers and analysts, but that's a challenge that we have in sport, because before now it hasn't really been life and death, but now it's a serious injury can happen.
I think the most important thing is because we multiply per 2 the speed, so that's a completely different situation, different perspective.
Right.
So that it's something that we have to the product needs to absorb the challenge that the technology brings to us. So I think that's in other sectors the evolution maybe was more the ramp up was more smooth than what happens in marine. We put in a different level so quickly. So we need to understood and absorb all that technology in the right manner. So I think that's the challenging.
Cool. Edward, in your space, like you said, you're focused initially on surf and SUP. What's the I guess part of things is getting the word out there that your product even exists. I can tell you honestly, when we talked about that delta in speed, I don't want to go much more than 15 knots standing on a hydrofoil. I'm pretty happy to do 12 to 15 as long as the wave's not going faster than that. What's been the feedback that you've gotten from riders and stores? Have you gotten some good positive feedback on the product so far?
So actually, our first customers are just being delivered now.
Oh, cool.
So there has been a few of outside tests, I would say, by people not involved in the development of this foil, which is actually good with regards to the target we had, which is focusing on beginners. And so what is amazing, the first amazing point that any riders using it tells us is how stable it is.
Cool.
And so we had the chance to combine the low speed kind of foils with thicker wings. And so because of this thickness, we managed to have also rubber materials included in the foil. And so first feedback is, okay, I feel safe when using it.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty stoked about how stable I can be with it. So this was, I would say, a missing link, and we had this willing to do the link between anybody who didn't foil before, and now who is managed to fly above water. So this is the feedback we have mainly, and secondly, is when will your model be available for wing foiling?
Right.
Because the market is also on this side, and this size of foil is not dedicated, and is not. I would not recommend this size of foil for wing foiling, because the lift is not enough, and the mast is not long enough as well. So we're working on it, and it will come next year.
Yeah.
To propose bigger sizes of foils and longer masts. And so after that, we wish to work on the points you mentioned earlier, which is sustainability of the materials used as well, how it can last longer as well. So when you get shocks with your foil, having the rubber at the front leading edge is something that also prevent your foil from breaking.
Yeah.
And something also important and interesting when using this kind of foil is how to make also your own equipment safer. When you fall down with your wing in a wave, then as long as the foil is just going upside down, there is one chance out of two to get your wing destroyed.
Right.
So by having this kind of outside stringers, side stringers, also makes no cutting edge going to your wing or your sail or any other device you need to have to get to get on the water. So this combined makes the feedback from our users good for the safety and the easiness of the product, and also our tester ask for more to be used in other sports and foil sports.
Awesome. And I think the one thing that I'm excited about, particularly with your product, is that early on, we're still really early in hydrofoiling, in board sports particularly, but everyone has a huge amount of influence. We've been talking about it all weeks already, and even in our pre-recorded sessions, that there are a lot of manufacturers now, but there's only one Sail GP, and there's only one foiling magazine, and there's only one foiling podcast, and there's only one foiling week, right? So people look to us to define the culture, to identify the parts of the foiling culture that we think is awesome, to identify the parts of foiling culture we think is not going in the right direction. And so in this particular case, it's nice to be talking about these kind of solutions and think of them as, because there's no racing circuit right now. There's only the Global Wing Sports Association. There's no surfing foiling circuit. So we decide what's cool and what's not cool. It doesn't always have to be, super pointy, high aspect foils. And so Laura, I want to throw this over to you as we kind of wrap up this discussion and say, can the boating side, the craft side of things in hydrofoiling, can they learn from not just the concept that Jordi is talking about in terms of reverse engineering products and behavior and materials from accidents, but also having the culture be, if moths can have a rubber leading edge, or have some control over the safety of the products and influence the culture.
Yeah, I think usability is the key here. Being an elite sailor or an elite team, like for example a Sail GP, you're always looking at boat work and how to make your foil shinier. But experiencing from the other end, where you actually have a normal job, or you go to school and you don't have the time to actually put in the hours of the boat work. And so using those more maybe rubber or other material foils, which don't actually scratch or create any problem, that's a key advantage to the sport here, because one thing is to have a dedicated short team that sand your foils for the whole day and night, or being an athlete yourself and you do it. And the other thing is, experiencing it in terms of you just want to have fun and go on the water. And when you see those very shiny wing foils or something like that scratching on the sand, for me it's like, I'm not really sure I can do that. But if I see 1,000 of them and everyone enjoying the water, is actually a lot nicer than spending the hour sanding your foils, I guess. So.
Yeah, it's less stressful and more inviting.
Exactly. So usability in terms of how much they can be approached, and you start learning to sail or to foil, and it's just spreading the word of foiling, as you're saying. Just one foiling week, but hopefully we can make a change in the future.
Great. Well, we have to start to wrap it up, and I'm really excited that everyone had the time to join us because everyone's super busy. There's not enough time in the day. Andrew, like a lot of the topics that we touch on in Foiling Week, it's we have an inspiring group of people, and we see opportunities that they're just taking. They're not waiting for someone. Edouard didn't wait for someone to ask him to design this product. And the solutions that Jordi's coming up with, he's going above and beyond what his original task was. What on the safety side of things, early days, people have a lot of concerns. Do you think that the culture in foiling right now is on strong footing as far as safety is concerned?
I feel it is actually, Chris. I think that there's a lot of to this. So, and it made me reflect on something that used to, perhaps 10 years ago, it wouldn't have had that same approach. I think that society has changed, and it's the way that the outlook we have about safety and sustainability. And I was thinking then, Edouard, about something like Volvo cars, which 20 years ago people called them the tractor of the town sort of thing. But somehow Volvo have done a great job in looking at performance cars, but with safety and sustainability as something they've created that as a virtue of their brand. And I think that for Decathlon, if you can do that with your products, where you're making sustainability and safety part of the virtue of your brands, then that really is what society today is looking for. And clearly, when I hear, Jordi, about the work you're doing and being able to take the learnings you've got from such as Formula One into SailGP, that shows that SailGP is paying real attention to this. It's taking it seriously. So I think that's music to the ears of people with grey hair like me who worry about things that are going very faster. And of course, as we get older, we worry about the youth of today going quicker and quicker. But it's reassuring because our kids will be going and doing these sports, and to hear that people like yourselves are paying this attention, I think is great news.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to end on that note. Thank you, Andrew, for being the sage of our group and putting things into perspective. Our next session, like I mentioned before, it comes from pioneers in hydrofoil training and safety, and they've taken a really super close look at the challenges that instead of just learning on the fly, like a lot of us have done in early sports. They have a really practiced approach that they're improving on every year, and they look to other sports like skiing and a more extreme sport where they really have training down because it's been done over decades. Great. Jordi, Edouard, and of course, Laura and Andrew from Lake Garda. Thank you so much for this safety session for the Foiling Week 2021 in the Gurit Forum. And we'll see both of you on the water. And then we have another session coming up in about an hour. So thank you, everyone, for joining. This is fantastic. It's a bright future for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.